Hey guys, it's Graveyard Graham. Welcome back to the Midnight Ride. Why is Sam Wilson a bad fit for the Captain America shield? I'm not going to belabor the point too much. I did a video on this recently on the main channel, but I wanted to give you a skydiving analysis and then a trucking analysis. I have never been skydiving, but my best friend was formerly a recreational skydiver. He's got 30 jumps under his belt, and he's explained a thing or two to me, and that's what stuck in my head about this. So I explained in the original video that after years of experience with the winged jetpack that Sam Wilson had in the Marvel universe, first in the Air Force and then as an Avenger, he got used to it working a certain kind of way. In his book, Matthew Crawford, he wrote a book called Why We Drive. He talked about people getting used to how cars feel around them the same way that an amputee would get used to a prosthetic, or even a person with a whole body would get used to an additional prosthetic. You learn how to move with it, how to carry the weight, how to adapt to its unique balance, and so on and so forth. The same would bear out for Sam, and as an aviator, one of his chief concerns is balance. We have that same concern in trucking. My skydiver friend told me that the reason that they fall in kind of that X shape with their feet split and their hands apart is it distributes their weight. It gives them, I can't remember the exact term, like equality of drag, so that they fall straight, they don't spin, they don't flop, and it controls their movements. And as long as they keep their movements symmetrical, they can sometimes control their direction. They can speed up, slow down, whether they're lying flat, standing up, diving, etc., etc. And when they go to pull the ripcord, in my head, I'm remembering that it was on the right leg. He said, if you've got your hands spread apart and you reach down with your right hand to pull the ripcord on your hip, you reach up with your left hand to counterbalance the movement, so that you remain somewhat symmetrical, that keeps you from taking on any kind of unbalanced force as you're still falling to the ground before your chute opens. It takes your chute like a second or a second and a half to fully open, depending on the material that it's made out of. So all of that would factor in, especially with somebody like Sam wearing a wing pack, who altogether might weigh about 300 pounds. Looking at Anthony Mackie, I'm just going to assume that he weighs around what I weigh, like maybe 200, 210, but he's way more muscular. He's packing some muscular density. And, in world, what does that jetpack weigh? Let's say it weighs another 40, 50 pounds. Say that it's advanced high tech. Let's say even the Wakandan one weighs 20 pounds. Okay, so all told, he weighs about 230. You get him up to speed, and the laws of physics kick in, and his movements are going to be more exaggerated, and so are the effects. That symmetry is going to keep being an issue. Now, you see when he's flying in the show, he's got the shield on his back. There are some times when he's at a lower altitude or a lower speed, and he's carrying it on his arm and stuff, and that's less of an issue. But the main issue is that now he's flying around, and he's got to change the way that he moves and operates in the air to carry something in his hands or on his arm or on his back. He's got to completely adapt himself to this new prosthetic. And that's what I was writing about in, first my essay and then my video script, saying, he's got to completely change his style in order to adapt to this new instrument that he doesn't really need. If he's got a vibranium Wakandan jetpack, that can provide all of the same benefits as the shield without any of the drawbacks of it. In trucking, we have the same issues with balance, but obviously without the airborne factor, it's a little bit different. But one of the first things that they teach you, no, I always say that, one of the first things they teach us in school, they do teach us about load distribution, though. You might not know this, but in a standard 53-foot configuration, tractor trailer, 53 foot being the trailer, the overall configuration is closer to 70. Your total gross weight can be 80,000 pounds. That's equipment and cargo. Your dry weight is going to be around 34,000. Well, not your dry weight, because you're going to account for fuel. but your tractor and your trailer together is going to be about 34. Your cargo will be about 46. You'll notice the balance is slightly in favor of the cargo as a matter of percentage. You really don't want to go too much heavier than that. As a general rule, your cargo can't be too much heavier than the equipment. And if you want to haul heavy, you've got to be heavy. But as far as the distribution goes, it's got to be pretty balanced. You can only have 12,000 pounds of weight on your steers, that's your front axle on the tractor, and then 34,000 pounds on your drives, those are the rear axles on the tractor, and 34,000 pounds on your tandems, those are the rear axles on the trailer. That's assuming that you have dual axles on the tractor and the trailer. Like I said, this is a 53-foot trailer, 70-foot configuration, the standard bread and butter OTR long haul, dock bumper type configuration. Balance matters. You can go a little bit out of it, but you can't go too exaggerated or else you're going to throw yourself out of whack. So I figured I would add that as a bit of an addendum to the original video, just because I wanted to elaborate on it. It was a bit of a physical point, but I didn't want to put this on the main channel. I don't want to clog it up with a whole bunch of physics. So here's a trucker talking out his rear end about physics. Like, no, these are things that I know and things that I can back up through experience. At the beginning of my career, I didn't have that prosthetic sense of driving a truck. You had to learn how to kind of expand your brain and think big, and be aware of that tail of the truck 65 feet behind you, and your height and your width and stuff. You gotta think bigger and feel bigger. Now I can back into a dock way easier than I could at the beginning of my career, just because I have that sixth sense, that spidey sense of knowing where the back end of the trailer is. The same thing would be true of a guy who has spent years in the air wearing a jetpack, who even back when Paramount would allow him to have firearms, Falcon had two of them. He had a pair of them. He wasn't carrying a rifle because he would necessarily have to bear the weight on one side or the other. I showed the movie Reign of Fire to my kids the other day. Excuse me, sorry, still fighting the crud. That's why I haven't posted much this week. I showed them the scene with the skydiving where they're trying to snare the dragon. And the same thing was true in that scene. As the archangels are diving head first, they had those net rifles, and a rifle is technically unbalanced, but these guys were in a nosedive, and they were holding it under their center mass and in front of them. You are going to have one hand forward and one hand back, but as a matter of linear weight distribution, they kept in principle with that. So that's my expansion on that particular thought. It goes back to why I think the shield is just a bad fit for an airborne character. Going back and watching those combat scenes from the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier, they were still beautifully shot. The choreography was really exciting and everything. I've long held that Steve Rogers is Captain America, and Sam Wilson is great at being the Falcon. They gave him in that alternate version that I wrote, they gave him a shot at being Captain America, and he realizes that he is at his best when he's the Falcon. But I gave him a reason for picking up the shield and for putting it down, for Bucky having it for a minute, and even in a future follow-up to that story, conceivably Bucky could put the shield down. He could learn as well. He's like, I don't need to be anybody but me. There's a powerful lesson in that. You could aspire to have the virtues and qualities of somebody else, but you don't need to take on their identity to be them. Be you. Just be the best you that you can be. Drive safe. See you out there.